Hey, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to another update on this finally Friday. The weekend is upon us here, January 5th, 2024, about 12:19 p.m. here, California time. We did have some activity stirring up down here in Southern California this morning, just about an hour or so ago. 4.1 earthquake. Very close here to highly populated regions there of Southern California, and also very close to the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. Closer inspection shows that this is, at least the location, is where the San Jacinto Fault and the San Andreas Fault, or the San Andreas plate boundary here, meet, which is a plate boundary here of the Pacific and the North American plate. A little concerning because, well, I think we're a little overdue in terms of, the earthquake potential out here. We'll check that out here in just a second. Look at some of the details here of this 4.2 coming in from the USGS. Again, it was very close to the Los Angeles area and other populated regions out here, so it was felt over a broad area. Quite a bit of Southern California reporting that earthquake again earlier this morning. Mostly light to maybe even some moderate shaking being reported out there in the Southern California area. I think a day like today is just a reminder to let everyone know or prepare, for the big one out here. Can't really worry about it too much because eventually it's going to happen. The best thing to do in order to survive a large earthquake is to be prepared. I did pull up historical data here. This area does see a lot of fours on occasion throughout the years, but the question is, could this be a foreshock to something much bigger about ready to take place? Well, obviously it could be. The historical data here around the Southern California area, and specifically where this earthquake struck today, just north of the Rancho Cucamonga area, shows us that one of the big ones back here in 1812 was at 7.5, very close to today's epicenter. Also 6.2 back in 1894. 1899, 6.4. A little bit further up north, back in 1812 as well, or 1857, it was at 6.3. So if you look here, there's definitely been a lot of earthquake activity in the large range out here, but this is not as large as it can get. A full rupture out here of the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault brings about an 8.1 magnitude earthquake here along this area. And if you notice, what do all these earthquakes out here have in common? Well, aside from proximity there to the San Andreas Fault, their time. It's been a long time since these earthquakes have struck. That tells me right there that potentially we could be, overdue for at least maybe another 7 or so, if not the big one out here. San Andreas Fault been one of the most studied faults out here in the world. The southern branch of the area there in Southern California is one of the, the main ones out here. Regular intervals here of large earthquakes occur roughly about 140 to 160 years. And if we consider that earthquake back in 1812, the 7.5, kind of where the earthquake struck today, that 4.1. That's 1812, 1912, 2012. That puts us well over 200 years since we've seen that 7.5 earthquake. So that tells us right there that we're overdue in this department, but also there's a lot of information here if you want to check it out today, if you guys got time. Also, it's been over 300 years since we've seen a major full rupture of the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. And let me see if I can find that here. I did have this outline, but it looks like that has disappeared. Here we go. Of course, 1906, right? We've seen the northern segment of the San Andreas Fault. I guess where the 1857 earthquake struck was considered the central section, and that's going to be this earthquake right up here, 6.3. They consider that the central section. But if you look here, there has not been any Large earthquake activity on the southern branch here in 300 years. Check this out. While the southern section has not seen any similar rupture for at least 300 years. That means that this big one out here, the 8.1, could occur at any time. Like I say, this could be some foreshock activity. We just don't know. It could happen tonight. Could happen right now. Could happen tomorrow. Could happen in the next few years. The thing is, it's always good to be prepared when we get these little events in terms of checking our earthquake escape bag, so to speak. Because a lot of stuff is going to be down for months, if not years, down there following an 8.1 magnitude earthquake. So just be prepared. There is a little bit of activity away from this zone here where that 4.2 struck. Looks like 1.5 up north, very close to the Garlock Fault shear zone, and low activity down south as well. I haven't really noticed any swarms here in the past few days. Just, your typical earthquake activity out here across various fault systems of Southern California. So just be on guard right there. I mean, it's a little scary. One thing I have noticed is the elevated activity over here just off the San Andreas Fault on the eastern side here. And that's where some of that strain, that little bend right here, would produce migrational stress quakes. And we've been noticing that. I think we've had a few out here in the last week or so. We don't normally see a lot of activity just right over here off the San Andreas Fault, but we have seen it here in the past week, and I think we've seen some even as we go back here in the last 30-day map, some activity out here. So it's been watching that a little bit. And today's activity on top of all this movement, again, just a good idea to be prepared in any case of, that this may be some foreshock activity. You just never know. 4.2. That's a shaker. But you throw in an 8.1 out here, and that can pretty much ruin everyone's day big time. So just stay safe out there in Southern California and be prepared. Movement up into the Washington area. Most of this was last night. We did see some earthquake activity near Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier. But to the west here, I believe these are stress quakes related to the plate dynamics out here between the North American plate and the Pacific plate. Of course, you got the huge Cascadia subduction zone capable of seeing something well above 8.1. This area last seen a major rupture of at least a 9 back in 1700. And then subsequently, that's a little, if you think about it, that's a little odd because 1700 is about 324 years ago, right? And they state that we have not seen a full rupture here in the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault in over 300 years. So that would coincide with the earthquake up here. That's questionable if one could trigger the other. I think it's possible, very possible. If you got enough fault strain built up here across a certain area, which we obviously do here in Southern California, you got to think about the northern and the central sections as well, right? 1906. A lot of people think that was, a long, long time ago, and to some it is, but we're coming up on over, well over 100 years now since we've seen any activity there, and well over about 150 years since that one down here in the central segment that struck back in 1857. So we're continuing to go overdue and overdue and overdue. That earthquake activity a few years ago in Ridgecrest is away from the plate boundary, on a totally different fault system out here. So you really can't say that was relieving stress out here against the San Andreas Fault, because it's not, definitely not. So be on guard. We'll cover this and more if we got anything else going on throughout the day today. Southern California seismograph stations there look pretty quiet for now. I'm sure that 4-pointer came in there pretty nicely. Let's look at the rest of the region here, see what else we have going on. Japan, right? We had that 7.5 out here on the 1st of January. Today, still seeing some activity, aftershock activity there, about 10 kilometers deep for that 4.9. I heard somewhere out here that certain areas of the beaches out here were raised. You could see it in relation to the sea level, or the old beach images out here. That tells me right there that was definitely produced some uplift in the land, and a lot of times this activity out here against the plate boundary here relieves a lot of strain out in California. Like back when we seen that 2011 earthquake, the big 9-pointer out there in Japan, geologists claimed that relieved, or at least bought a little bit more time out here for the West Coast, due to the relation of the general plate movement out here. But this activity may have added further strain across this plate boundary, which could increase further strain out here. It seems like things have been somewhat elevated out here across California and the North American plate in general since that earthquake out here on the 1st. I mean, we've seen swarming kicking up there in Yellowstone over the past, well, it kicked up literally a couple hours after the 7.5 out there in Japan. We've seen a swarm out here in Yellowstone. And then we were watching a swarm here yesterday. Today, looks like they added a couple earthquakes on here. But there was a lot more than this. I'll bring this up here real quick. There was a lot more. This is today's map. It does show some earthquake activity out here across Yellowstone, but nothing what it was looking like here yesterday. We had a little bit here across the area, and then the day before, seen some movement as well. You know, so all this activity is occurring following that 7.5 out there in Japan. It's possible it did create some further stress out here against the plate boundary, and ultimately affecting areas inland away from the plate boundary where Yellowstone sits. So yeah, we're kind of watching that. Today's activity, let's see what we got here for any interesting movement. Yeah, just this activity here across Mary Lake, a handful of earthquakes there. A lot more, though, than what the USGS is stating. They show about 8 earthquakes, but there was obviously more. These are not big earthquakes. The largest of 1.6, it looks like they're, according to the USGS. See what we got down in Texas out here. Oil field's been getting hit pretty hard as well. Some earthquake activity close to the New Madrid seismic zone, and a couple more earthquakes up here across the northeastern part of the country. And that's been kind of the deal here over the last couple days, right? Seen a little bit of scattered activity up here against the mountain ranges, the Appalachian Mountains, and areas just to the north here. Definitely looks like the North American plate is strained out here. But the question is, where are we going to see the obvious areas, see some larger scale movement? And I obviously think out here across the West Coast, I mean, we're looking at quite a bit of strain out here that's been built up over the years. Maine, let's see what this earthquake is. 1.6 that's from yesterday. 2.6 here in Ohio. Occasionally we do see some activity up here. Been a little while. Looks like they did have another one back in on the 1st, on the 1st of January, a little 2.4. So, well, we're kind of starting off 2024 crazy in all areas of certain topics out here. Earth-related sciences, volcanoes, and whatnot are just one of them. Let's see what's going on out here in Hawaii. That activity across the Big Island looks like it's very, very close here to the, if not right under the Kilauea volcano crater area. Very shallow earthquake, 2.2. Let's go check and see what's going on there real quick. From the hazard notification system here. I keep skipping over it. Go to HVO, Kilauea Daily Update. This was put out today. It shows as of as of 9 a.m. Hawaii time. The volcano is currently not erupting. Still seeing some earthquake activity underneath the area with increased shallow seismicity can be expected to continue during repressurization of the Summit Magma Reservoir, which has been ongoing since the end of the September eruption. We're still looking at elevated tilt out there. Let's go see the tilt meter there across Kilauea volcano real quick. See if there's anything of interest. I know we got that earthquake there across the summit region just now. Still going up. Goodness, still going up. Here's our current inflation rate. And on this chart, it may not look like much. Obviously, it's still going up and up and up each day since December 7th. But if we were to go back the last couple months, it would show pretty much a steady rise of inflation there across the Kilauea volcano. And this is the highest level of inflation since the 2018 eruption that was outside the area here of the summit. So things are getting interesting. Just a matter of time, I suppose, before we see some activity open up out there. Here's a little view from the observation tower. Many different views out there. Let's see what we got. Of course, volcanic gases seeping up through the tiniest of the cracks out there in the summit region. This is the lava lake area where most of the, the past few eruptions have been confined to filling up this lake. Again, the 2018 eruption was a little bit more dynamic. So that's just an area we'll continue to watch. Ooh, look at that, getting some earthquake activity right in that spot I had just mentioned I was worried about, right? Remember, we just chatted about some activity right on the eastern side here of this bend where some of that migrational pressure could transfer. Now we got a 1.1 coming in there. Goodness. Doesn't mean a big one's going to happen. Definitely not, wise to be scared. It's definitely a good idea to be prepared. I live up here in Northern California, so we're away from the coast here in Chico. But still, we definitely feel that 9-pointer up here, and possible we could feel the 8-pointer to some extent. But no doubt, an 8.1 down there in Southern Cal would not be a good way to start off the year. But again, be prepared. Take times like today when we get a little bit of shaking to have a handy bag, so to speak, or maybe a tote. I have several totes actually that I have to load up if I need to get out of here real quick or go to a different area for shelter. It's just good to have your common commodities and items that you need on a daily basis. Medicine, always good to have cash on hand, right? Because a lot of banks and power systems would be down. So yeah, it's just, a lot of people just brush it aside. Well, if it happens, it happens. There's nothing we can do about it. Well, I don't want to be one of those people. I want to be prepared and make sure I survive it instead of becoming a victim or a statistic of it. So get a plan ready. There's, totes are really cheap at Walmart, anywhere. I don't know where you guys shop, but pick up a couple of totes and make yourself a little getaway plan. All right, Iceland, what's going on up here? Anything going on in the Atlantic? Doesn't look like it. We got a little 2.8 there. Let's go check out the Iceland area real quick. Last night it was fairly quiet. Here's the last 12 hours of earthquake activity. Mainly, looks like some movement kicking off down here across this area. Been noticing a little swarm of activity in certain areas of Iceland. There's all sorts of continental rift zones out here. The area of interest around the Grindavik does look a little bit more active today in terms of earthquake activity. This is the Fisher area, or the older Fisher area that opened up back on the 18th of December. It lasted for a day or so. Can't remember exactly how long, but it kicked off with a big-time swarm of earthquake activity prior to any Fisher activity opening up. This right here, I would not consider that type of event. There was hundreds of earthquakes literally within an hour before that Fisher activity opened up. Right now, a handful of earthquakes within that magma intrusion area telling us that things are still potentially active here. The GPS chart here shows a vertical displacement. We started to take a more of an upward trend here in the last couple days compared to that linear fashion. Right about there, the geologists were claiming that we're very close to an eruption because we've leveled out and the ground cannot handle any more pressure underneath of it. So that's when you see fissure activity open up, and then you get the eruption. But we're starting to go back up. And it looks like right now we are above the previous level of inflation there across the Svartsengi area, just prior to the 2023 eruption there on the 18th of December. It dropped down, did see some pressure relief, but we're going back up, leveled off, and now we're going back up again. That means that we might have a little ways to go. The question is how much time, right? Let's go to the Icelandic Meteorological Office, see if they have anything new out today. They did put out an updated hazard map for the Grindavik-Svartsengi region, and that looks like that is it. This is a huge one here. Let me drop this down a little bit so we can see. Oops, I did not mean to do that. Okay, so Zone 3, obviously. Zone 2 is where the magma intrusion area has taken place. But also that dike has extended, originally was extended through Grindavik and then just offshore. Right now they just have Grindavik and Zone 4, which means earthquakes, fractures, lava flow potential coming down from any new fissure activity that opens up. They are chatting about building a barrier here across the Grindavik area, attempting to save the town from any damage from lava flows, which I think it's going to take them about 3 weeks to complete. A pretty hefty amount of money as well. And fault movements, right? Obviously, we could see some, larger earthquake activity and some ground movement down here. They don't think that it's going to be in the zone of fissure activity. I mean, it's always possible. Because we did see that ground rise up here, and then it sunk, and then it moved up north here. So it's always possible to see some fissure activity here. But right now, it looks like Zone 3, up here where our most recent activity has been confined to. You can see the lava extent, December 21st. Fissure activity, there was a couple different fissures here. We had lava flow kind of flowing southward, and it's always possible it could flow down this area. 2 and 3, earthquakes, fractures, lava flow, eruptive fissures without warning. A lot of uncertainty, though, on if we're going to indeed see this area be the main area for fissure activity. That's what they're claiming here, that it's going to be. But as always, certain zones out here, the rising is great out here across the Svartsengi area. And then supposedly it travels for a little bit to this region where the crust is thinner at the surface levels there, and that's why we see fissure activity. But it's possible we could see this stuff kick up anywhere. But the most likely region is what they're claiming right here. So that is, looks like that's the latest map here. Doesn't look like they've included any... here we go. The rate of land uplift near the Svartsengi area continues to decrease. That's put out today. Let me look at that again. I don't know. I'm not really seeing it decrease. Did I read that right? The rate of land uplift near Svartsengi continues to decrease. Huh. I see it increasing, at least on the map there. Experts gathered at the meteorological office this morning confirmed this through an analysis of GPS data. As previously reported, this signals a rise in magma pressure, increasing the likelihood of a new dike intrusion and potentially eruption. However, it cannot be ruled out that this may alternatively suggest a decrease in magma inflow. Huh, interesting there. That last little circle there kind of shows a little uptrend there. So, but that's what they're claiming. That's the information there from the experts at the Icelandic Met Office. According to their evaluation there, scientists conclude that in the event magma reaches the surface, the most probable site for a subsequent eruption would be, again, this area of our previous eruption area, which is right around here. Fissure activity that opened up in December 18th or so last year. So we'll continue to watch that. Kind of interesting there. Some interesting wording. All right, Japan's still seeing some further activity out here right now, 5.2, about 20 minutes or so ago. It's just good to be prepared out here, folks. Looks like Southern California is still lighting up out here. Latest one of 1.6, so this is not generally just localized to this area. This kind of looks like it's on a broader regional scale in terms of pressure increase out here. So be prepared, folks. Let's see what else we got here across the globe. Live stream went down at like 12:30 or 1 o'clock last night, and just as I was about ready to go to bed, but I looked on the my internet provider. They had an outage, like a regional outage, so I just went to bed and then fired up the stream when I had time this morning. So it is back up and running. 5.1 out here across this area. Is USGS reporting this? Looks like, well, maybe they're reporting a little bit smaller magnitude, 4.7. EMSC reporting what looks like a 5.1 out here in the same area. Space weather activity. After a quick glance here, there's that earthquake in Japan that just came in. I do have a couple seismograph stations here that are offline. Looks like my plate boundary stations are offline here, but hopefully they'll come back. Let's go check out space weather activity. Still seeing some proton events here, limited to the southern polar region. That looks like a little bit up north here, but mainly last couple days has been confined here to the southern polar region. Not really expecting any effects from that. Flaring activity. See what we look like today. Newer sunspot region coming around the southeastern limb here. Looks fairly massive, fairly dynamic as well. 35, 36, 35, 37 up here, still kind of holding together, but uncertain on if this is going to be capable of producing any sizable flares. Most likely we're going to see a new replacement down there that may take over the show. 95% chance for a C flare, M flare at 40, X flare around 10% chance or so. No major auroras are expected. Again, we'll continue to watch this newer region here on the southeastern limb of the sun. Does look like it may harbor some potential for some flaring once we get a better look at it. It's more Earth directed. Marginal risk for some severe weather out here today, mainly across portions of the south around Louisiana. Mississippi in there as well, and portions of Florida for a 2% threat for tornado probability. A little bit of wind damage potential as well. Not looking at anything majorly severe, but there is that 2% zone there for tornado potential. Weather out here still looking likely that we'll see that cold air come down out of the north. That's going to bring some low elevation snow here, roughly about, it's going to be about the 10th or 11th is when we see that huge change from kind of a west to east flow. This is going to come straight down here across the west coast, bring with it a lot of colder air out here. Look at that low snow level. Oregon valleys are probably going to get some snow as well. We put that into motion there, and you can see that cold air just come right on down into New Mexico, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska. All these areas going to get, looks like maybe some snow potential. Does look like that cold air is going to sit around for a little bit before we have more of a southwest flow here. Notice the storm system coming in from this direction up this way. That should alter that cold air, kind of move it to the east, hopefully, and bring us some more rainfall out here across California. Noticing that cold air kind of scooting back over here towards the northeast, so you guys can have all that super duper cold air. So yeah, we'll kind of watch it. Either way, it's a fairly dynamic setup here. Extensively, a lot of cold air being displaced from the north. Looking at some temperatures that are, well, they're going to be quite cold out here. These are the expected air temperatures across the region. You can see some of those nights there. Oh, goodness, negative 40, negative 36. That's a little, for me, that's a little chilly. And that's going to, include a broad area up there of some colder air. We do have one day down here, it looks like, fairly cold out in Northern California, but A lot of times we dodge these cold systems because of the mountains out here. But it's hard to say if it's going to sink down in Northern California or not. But either way, yeah, that's a lot of cold air. All right, folks, I'm going to jump off here. We do have a Southern California station up right there called Barrett. A little bit of activity in Japan still. Just be prepared. You know, not a good day to be in panic mode at all, but with California lighting up out here, you know, kind of left and right, it looks like. It's a good idea to be prepared. And again, take a couple hours to create a little earthquake plan, so to speak, with the kids, you know, because panic sets in when there's a lot of large shaking. The first thing to do is get to safety. And from there, depending on how bad the situation is, then you can decide on if escape route would be the best or shelter. Either way, it's good to have an earthquake, little earthquake plan set up. All right, folks, I'm out of here. Friday, not for sure what all Friday has in store for me, but we'll figure it out. Have a good one. Catch you guys back here a little bit later on.